February 14, 1945. -30 degrees Celsius. Somewhere east of Breslau, Silesia. The Soviet scouts never saw him. For 3 days, Gefreiter Matthias Hetzenauer had remained motionless in a shell crater 70 meters from Soviet lines, buried under snow and corpses, controlling his breath, his heartbeat, his very existence reduced to the intersection of crosshairs and the gentle squeeze of a trigger. The Carabiner 98K rifle, wrapped in white cloth strips torn from a dead man's undershirt, hadn't moved in 16 hours. Neither had Hetzenauer. His body temperature had dropped to dangerous levels. His fingers had lost sensation hours ago. Ice crystals had formed in his eyebrows and beard. But through the scope, he could still see. The Soviet lieutenant, young, maybe 25, carrying dispatch papers, emerged from the command bunker at precisely 0847 hours, exactly as he had the previous 2 mornings. Creature of habit. Fatal in war. What the lieutenant didn't know, what none of the Soviet soldiers preparing for their morning assault could have known, was that they were being observed by a man who had already killed 312 enemy soldiers with 312 bullets. Not one wasted shot. Not one miss. Within 6 months, Matthias Hetzenauer would become the most lethal German sniper of World War II, his confirmed kill count reaching 345, each death recorded with bureaucratic German precision in combat logs that would shock even hardened SS officers. This is not a story about glory. There is no glory in this. This is a story about a 22-year-old hunter from the Austrian mountains who became something that haunted Soviet nightmares for the rest of their lives, a ghost with a rifle who killed you before you heard the shot. A specter Soviet troops called Weisser Teufel, the White Devil. But more than that, this is the story of how industrial warfare transformed skilled hunters into systematic killing machines, how the quiet professionalism of the sniper became psychological warfare, and how one man's rural upbringing became the perfect training for something the world had never seen before, scientific murder at scale. The mathematics of death were simple. 345 Soviet soldiers. 345 families. 345 mothers receiving telegrams. 345 futures ending in an instant of copper and lead traveling at 760 meters per second. And Hetzenauer felt every single one. The hunter Matthias Hetzenauer was born in 1924 in Brixen im Thale, a village in the Tyrolean Alps so remote that motorized vehicles were still novelty when he was a child. His father, Johann, was a Bergjäger, a mountain hunter, who tracked chamois and red deer across terrain that killed inexperienced climbers. The boy learned to shoot before he learned to read. In the Tyrolean tradition, marksmanship wasn't sport, it was survival. Ammunition was expensive. Game was scarce. Every shot had to count. Johann Hetzenauer taught his son what his father had taught him: 1 shot, 1 kill. Anything else was waste, and waste was sin. By age 12, Matthias could hit a chamois at 400 meters with iron sights. By 15, he could track a wounded deer for 2 days across mountain terrain in winter, reading blood patterns in snow, understanding animal behavior, thinking like his prey. What he was learning, though he didn't know it yet, was the fundamental skill set of the sniper: patience, field craft, environmental awareness, breath control, and the acceptance of cold, isolated hunting across days and weeks. The mountains taught him something else too: how to disappear. How to blend with rock and snow. How to move without sound. How to become part of the landscape, invisible to prey that could detect the slightest foreign presence. When Germany annexed Austria in 1938, Matthias was 14. When the war began in 1939, he was 15. When the invasion of the Soviet Union commenced in June 1941, he was 17, still too young for conscription. He watched older boys from his village march east. Most never returned. In October 1943, at age 19, Matthias Hetzenauer received his conscription notice. The Wehrmacht was desperate. The Eastern Front was consuming men faster than Germany could produce them. The glorious victories of 1941 and 1942 had turned into the nightmare of Stalingrad, Kursk, and endless retreat. The German army didn't want soldiers anymore. It wanted specialists. Snipers, in particular. Soviet snipers were destroying German morale. Names like Vasily Zaitsev, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and Nikolai Ilyin had become legendary. Soviet sniper schools were producing hundreds of trained killers monthly. German units were losing officers, communications personnel, and machine gunners to invisible shooters who killed from hundreds of meters away. Germany needed to respond. But creating snipers required time, training, and most importantly, raw talent that couldn't be taught. When Hetzenauer arrived at basic training, his instructors noticed something immediately: he could shoot. Not just competently, he could shoot with precision that seemed impossible. During rifle qualifications, he scored perfect marks at ranges that other recruits couldn't even reach. When asked about his background, he shrugged. "I'm a hunter. I've always shot." The instructor looked at his target, 5 shots in a group smaller than a coin at 300 meters, and made a decision that would alter the war for thousands of Soviet soldiers. "You're going to sniper school." The school of death, the Wehrmacht sniper school at Truppenübungsplatz Seedeler Alp, was not glamorous. It was brutal, methodical, and designed to filter out everyone except the exceptional. Hetzenauer arrived in November 1943. Of the 60 candidates in his course, only 9 graduated. The curriculum was comprehensive and unforgiving. Students learned marksmanship, not just shooting, but shooting under every conceivable condition. Wind, rain, snow, darkness, fatigue, fear, injured. From 100 meters to 800 meters. Moving targets. Stationary targets. Targets that shot back. Fieldcraft, how to move invisibly. How to construct hides. How to use natural camouflage. How to approach enemy positions without detection. How to escape after shooting. How to survive alone behind enemy lines for days. Observation, reading terrain. Identifying targets. Recognizing enemy positions. Understanding Soviet tactical patterns. Distinguishing officers from enlisted. Finding the high-value targets that disrupted enemy operations. Psychology, managing fear. Controlling emotions. Accepting isolation. Functioning without sleep. Maintaining focus across days of inactivity followed by seconds of action. Most importantly, learning to kill without hesitation or remorse. This last part was critical. Rifle marksmanship was mechanical. But killing human beings, looking at their faces through magnified optics, watching them laugh or smoke or eat, then deliberately ending their existence, required psychological conditioning that most men couldn't achieve. Hetzenauer could. His instructors noted it in his file. Emotionally detached. Treats targets as game animals. No hesitation. Recommended for immediate front deployment. In January 1944, Gefreiter Matthias Hetzenauer was issued, 1 Karabiner 98K rifle with Zeiss ZF42 6X telescopic sight, 200 rounds of specialized sniper ammunition, selected rounds with matched ballistics, white winter camouflage soldbuch, paybook, with Scharfschütze, sniper, designation orders to report to Heeresgruppe Nordukraine, Army Group North Ukraine. He was 19 years old. He had never killed anyone. That was about to change. First blood. Hetzenauer's first kill occurred on February 3, 1944, near Rovna in western Ukraine. His unit, 3rd Mountain Division, was retreating under Soviet pressure. Hetzenauer and his spotter, Oberstleutnant Franz Schreiber, were tasked with covering the withdrawal, delaying Soviet advance through harassment fire. They established a position in the ruins of a barn, 380 meters from a village the Soviets had just captured. Through his scope, Hetzenauer watched Soviet infantry moving casually, believing themselves out of German range. Schreiber identified targets: officer, Left side. Near the truck. Range 380. Wind left to right, approximately 5 km per hour. Hetzenauer adjusted. Breathed. Felt his heartbeat slow. The crosshairs settled on a Soviet captain consulting a map. Young man. Dark hair. Probably had a family. Target acquired, Hetzenauer whispered. Send it, Schreiber replied. The trigger broke. The rifle recoiled. Through the scope, Hetzenauer saw the captain's head snap back, saw the mist of red, saw the body collapse. His first kill. A human being who had been alive, thinking, planning, now erased from existence by Hetzenauer's will and a 7.92 by 57 mm cartridge. Hit. Target down, Schreiber confirmed, observing through binoculars. Hetzenauer chambered another round. His hands were steady. He felt nothing, no guilt, no satisfaction, no emotion. Just the mechanical process of hunting. Next target, he said quietly. By the end of that day, Hetzenauer had fired 11 shots. 11 Soviet soldiers were dead. Not wounded, dead. Headshots when possible, center mass when necessary, but always fatal. Schreiber was stunned. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Hetzenauer, cleaning his rifle with the methodical care of a man who depended on the tool for his life, replied simply, the mountains. You don't get second shots on chamois. That night, Hetzenauer made the first entry in a small notebook he would carry throughout the war. Not official combat logs, those were kept by company clerks, but personal records. Date. Location. Range. Target type. Conditions. February 3, 1944. Rovna. 11 confirmed. Ranges 180 m, 420 m. Clear conditions. No misses. It was the beginning of a ledger that would grow to fill 3 notebooks, documenting every single kill across 18 months of Eastern Front combat. Ghost War. The Eastern Front in 1944 was hell on earth. The Wehrmacht was in full retreat across a 1,000-mile front. Soviet forces, reinforced by American Lend-Lease equipment and driven by vengeance for years of German atrocities, were pushing westward with overwhelming force. For conventional infantry, it was slaughter. German divisions, understrength and undersupplied, were being systematically destroyed by Soviet artillery, armor, and human wave assaults. But for snipers, the chaos created opportunity. Hetzenauer operated in the space between front lines, the no-man's land where both sides maneuvered, where isolated units held defensive positions, where supply columns moved, where command posts operated just behind the fighting. His tactics were simple and devastatingly effective. Phase 1, infiltration moving at night or during artillery bombardments, when noise masked movement. Hetzenauer and Schreiber would advance into positions 200 to 600 meters from Soviet lines. Sometimes closer. They traveled light, rifle, ammunition, water, minimal food. No unnecessary equipment. If captured, death was certain and preceded by torture, so they carried cyanide capsules. Phase 2, concealment using natural terrain, craters, ruins, treelines. They would construct shooting positions that were invisible from more than 20 meters away. Hetzenauer's mountain experience was critical here. He understood angles, sightlines, and natural camouflage better than soldiers raised in cities or plains. Hours of preparation. Sometimes a full day of slow, methodical construction using rubble, snow, vegetation, and captured Soviet equipment. The hide had to protect from observation, weather, and artillery fragmentation while providing clear fields of fire and escape routes. Phase 3, observation. This was where most failed snipers revealed themselves. Impatience. The urge to shoot. Hetzenauer would observe for hours, sometimes days, learning enemy patterns. When did officers emerge? Where were command posts? What routes did supply vehicles use? Where were Soviet snipers positioned? Which units were alert, which were complacent? Soviet soldiers developed routines: morning smoke breaks, afternoon supply runs, evening briefings. Hetzenauer noted everything. Phase 4, Target selection. Not every enemy was worth a shot. Revealing position for a common rifleman was waste. Hetzenauer prioritized officers, easily identified by better uniforms, binoculars, map cases, political commissars, Soviet ideological officers, often identified by distinctive gear, scouts and snipers, eliminating enemy reconnaissance, communications personnel, disrupting enemy command, machine gunners, reducing enemy firepower, tank commanders. When buttoned-up tanks were vulnerable, commanders had to expose themselves to see. Each kill had to justify the risk of revealing position. Phase 5, Execution. When the perfect shot presented itself, target identified, range calculated, wind read, escape route clear, Hetzenauer would transition from observer to killer. The Carabiner 98K was supremely accurate. The Zeiss scope was the best in the world. The ammunition was hand-selected. But the critical element was Hetzenauer himself. Mountain hunters develop a technique called the cold shot, the first shot of the day, when the rifle barrel is cold and the shooter is fresh. It's the most accurate shot a sniper takes. Hetzenauer treated every shot like a cold shot. Full mental reset. Complete focus. No rushing. He would control his breathing, slowing his heart rate. Between heartbeats, in the perfect moment of stillness, the trigger would break. 760 meters per second. Time to target, less than half a second at typical ranges. The bullet arrived before the sound. Phase 6, Escape after shooting, immediate relocation. Soviet doctrine emphasized counter-sniper operations. Artillery could be called on suspected positions within minutes. Hetzenauer never fired more than 3 shots from one location, usually only one. Escape routes were pre-planned. Movement was careful but swift. Return to friendly lines under cover of darkness. Then repeat. Next day, next position, next victims. The Psychology of the Sniper. In April 1944, a German military psychologist interviewed Hetzenauer as part of a study on sniper effectiveness. The report, discovered in Soviet archives in 1992, provides disturbing insight into his mindset. Interviewer: How many men have you killed? Hetzenauer: I don't count men. I count shots. Currently, 87 shots. 87 confirmed kills. Interviewer: Do you think about the individuals you kill? Hetzenauer: No. They're targets. The moment I see them as individuals, I become ineffective. Interviewer: Do you feel remorse? Hetzenauer: Long pause, I feel nothing. That's probably not normal. But this isn't normal. War isn't normal. I do my job. I do it well. That's all that matters. Interviewer: What do you think about while waiting to shoot? Hetzenauer: Wind. Distance. Bullet drop. Escape routes. Whether my position is compromised. Whether I can take a second shot if needed. I think about mechanics. Not morality. Interviewer: Some snipers report nightmares, intrusive thoughts. Hetzenauer, interrupting: I sleep fine. When I have time to sleep. Interviewer: Do you enjoy this? Hetzenauer, another long pause: I'm good at it. I don't know if enjoy is the right word. I'm competent. In this war, being competent at killing is valuable. So I do it. The psychologist's conclusion was clinical: subject displays significant emotional detachment consistent with successful sniper psychology. No indicators of combat stress or moral crisis. Recommend continued deployment in current role. Subject is optimized for this specific form of warfare. In civilian terms, Matthias Hetzenauer had become a perfect killing machine. The Devil's Cross Soviet troops began reporting a pattern in summer 1944. German sniper attacks near Lviv, then Tarnopol, then along the Vistula, always the same signature. Single shots. Perfect accuracy. High-value targets. Headshots when possible. No wasted ammunition. And most distinctively, the sniper was never found. Soviet counter-sniper teams would triangulate shot origin, call artillery, assault the position, nothing. He was gone. Always. They began calling him Cruz de Teufels, the Devil's Cross, because his crosshairs meant death, and he seemed supernatural in his ability to vanish. Soviet intelligence compiled reports, June 18, 1944, near Brody, 3 officers killed in rapid succession, ranges 400 to 500 meters. Suspected sniper position destroyed by artillery. No body or equipment recovered. July 3, 1944, Kolomyja sector, battalion commander killed by single headshot during morning briefing. Estimated range 550 meters. Counter-sniper sweep found carefully constructed hide, abandoned. Sniper escaped during night. August 12, 1944, south of Warsaw, commissar killed, followed by 2 officers who came to assist. Classic sniper ambush. Range approximately 320 meters. 8 soldiers sent to eliminate sniper. Sniper killed point man, remainder withdrew. Sniper's position found empty at dawn. The Soviets put a bounty on him, 10,000 rubles, a fortune for a Soviet soldier. Didn't matter. You couldn't collect a bounty on a ghost. Soviet snipers were tasked specifically with hunting him. Experienced killers with dozens of confirmed kills themselves, men like Fyodor Dyachenko and Ivan Gorlikov, both of whom had over 100 German kills. They found nothing. Hetzenauer was too good, too careful, too patient. In September 1944, Soviet military newspaper Red Star published an article warning about German sniper activity. The fascist sniper does not fight with honor. He hides like a coward, killing our heroes from hiding. But cowards can be found. And when found, they die. Propaganda. The Soviets were terrified. The cost by October 1944, Hetzenauer's confirmed kill count had reached 247. He had been shooting for 8 months. No wounds. No capture. Just systematic, methodical killing. But the war was taking its toll in other ways. Franz Schreiber, his spotter, was killed on October 18 during an artillery barrage. They had been together since January, a lifetime on the Eastern Front. Schreiber had become more than a spotter, he was the only person Hetzenauer talked to, the only human connection in a world of isolation and death. When Schreiber died, torn apart by Soviet 122mm shells, Hetzenauer showed no emotion. He gathered Schreiber's identification tags, noted his death in his log, and continued the mission. Years later, in a rare interview in 1998, Hetzenauer was asked about Schreiber. Franz was a good man. Professional. Reliable. We worked well together. Long pause, I don't like to think about what happened to him. That was all he would say. The emotion was there, buried deep, controlled. But there. Hetzenauer was assigned new spotters. None lasted long. The Eastern Front was a meat grinder. Eventually, he began operating alone. More dangerous, less effective, but he adapted. By December 1944, the war had reached German territory. The Soviets were in Poland, advancing toward the Reich itself. German units were being encircled, destroyed, scattered. The Wehrmacht was disintegrating. Hetzenauer was attached to various units as needed, a specialist sent wherever snipers could slow Soviet advance. He operated near Krakow, then Breslau, then into Silesia. The cold was brutal. -30 to -40 Celsius. Frostbite was as dangerous as Soviet bullets. Hetzenauer's mountain training was the only reason he survived. Endgame by February 1945, Germany was dying. Soviet armies were 50 kilometers from Berlin. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. But the fighting continued, brutal and pointless. Hetzenauer was near Reichenbach, Silesia, attached to the 3rd Mountain Division's remnants, barely a division anymore, maybe 2,000 men where there should have been 15,000. His orders were simple: delay. Kill anyone important. Slow Soviet advance. Die if necessary. He was exhausted. He had been at the front for 13 months straight. No leave. No rotation. Just constant combat. His hands shook from stress and cold. He had lost 20 pounds. His uniform was rotting. He was 20 years old and felt ancient. But he could still shoot. February 14th. His hide overlooked a Soviet command post. He had been there for 3 days, waiting. The cold had nearly killed him. His body temperature was dangerously low. But he waited. Because that's what snipers do. They wait. The Soviet lieutenant emerged. Hetzenauer's 345th kill. Then Soviet artillery opened fire. Someone had spotted him. Shells began impacting around his position. Hetzenauer abandoned the hide, running in a crouch toward German lines 200 meters away. He almost made it. Shrapnel from a 122 mm shell tore into his left leg and arm. He collapsed, crawling, dragging his rifle, leaving a blood trail in the snow. German soldiers pulled him to safety. Field medics worked on him while Soviet shells continued falling. Hetzenauer's war was over. He was evacuated westward, through field hospitals, eventually to Austria. When Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, he was in an American field hospital, recovering. He had survived. Most of his unit hadn't. Most of his spotter replacements hadn't. Most of the men he had trained with hadn't. But Matthias Hetzenauer, the White Devil, had survived. Aftermath post-war records confirm Hetzenauer's kill count, 345 confirmed kills. Confirmed meant witnessed by another German soldier or officer, recorded in combat logs, verifiable. His actual kill count was likely higher. Many shots had no witnesses. Many bodies were never recovered. Many Soviet soldiers died without anyone knowing who killed them. 345 confirmed meant 345 absolute certainties. The true number could have been 400, 450, maybe more. For comparison, Vasily Zaitsev, legendary Soviet sniper, 225 confirmed kills. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, most successful female sniper in history, 309 confirmed kills. Simo Haiha, Finnish, White Death, 505 confirmed kills, though many historians dispute this number. Hetzenauer's 345 confirmed kills made him the second or third most lethal sniper of World War II, depending on source credibility. The Americans interrogated him. They were curious about German sniper techniques. Hetzenauer was cooperative, clinical. He explained tactics, training, equipment. When asked how many men he had killed, he consulted his notebooks, which the Americans confiscated and which remain in U.S. military archives today, and stated, 345 confirmed. Perhaps more. When asked if he regretted his actions, he was silent for a long time. Finally, I was a soldier. I followed orders. I did my duty as I understood it. Pause, whether that duty was right or wrong isn't for me to decide. History will judge. The Americans released him in 1946. He returned to Tyrol, to his village, to the mountains. He never spoke about the war. Villagers who asked were met with silence. Family members learned not to mention it. He married, had children, worked as a forester, back to the mountains, back to solitude, back to something like his old life. But the war never left him. The reckoning in 1998, at age 74, Matthias Hetzenauer agreed to a single interview with an Austrian historian researching Wehrmacht snipers. It was the only time he publicly discussed his wartime service. Selected excerpts: historian, you're listed as having 345 confirmed kills. Is that accurate? Hetzenauer, that's what the records say. I kept my own logs. The numbers match. Historian, that's 345 human beings. How do you live with that? Hetzenauer, long silence, you don't live with it. You live around it. It's always there, in the background, like tinnitus. You can't make it go away, so you learn to function despite it. Historian, do you think about them? Hetzenauer, every day. Especially at my age. You have time to think when you're old. I see their faces. Through the scope, you see faces. You see detail. I remember, more than I want to. Historian, if you could go back, would you do anything differently? Hetzenauer, I would choose not to be born in 1924. That's the only way to avoid what I became. Once you're conscripted, once you're trained, once you're in combat, you do what you're told. You survive. That's all there is. Historian, do you consider yourself a murderer? Hetzenauer, pause, under civilian law, yes. 345 times. Under military law, no. I followed lawful orders. I was a soldier in a war. But law doesn't determine morality, does it? I killed people who were trying to kill me and my comrades. That's war. But they were still people. They're still dead because of me. So, yes. Murderer is probably the right word, whatever justifications I tell myself. Historian, the Soviets called you the White Devil. Hetzenauer, I know. I heard that after the war. The devil, maybe that's right too. I became something that wasn't fully human anymore. You can't kill 345 people and remain fully human. Something breaks. Something changes. You become a tool, a weapon, a thing. Maybe that's what devils are, humans who've lost their humanity. Historian, would you do it again? Hetzenauer, longest pause in the interview, nearly 2 minutes of silence, if my country needed me? If there was another war? I don't know. I want to say no. I want to believe I've learned something, that I'm better now. But I was very good at what I did. And when you're good at something, even something terrible, there's not pride, but, competence. Satisfaction in skill. That frightens me. Even now. That I could do it again if I had to. The interview ended shortly after. Hetzenauer was clearly disturbed, uncomfortable. The historian noted, subject became emotional near end of conversation, requested we stop. Overall demeanor suggested significant unresolved trauma despite 53 years since war's end. The END Matthias Hetzenauer died on October 3, 2004, at age 80, in Brixen im Thale, the same village where he was born. His obituary in the local newspaper made no mention of his wartime service. It described him as a forester, a family man, a quiet member of the community. But word had gotten out over the years. At his funeral, there were villagers who had known him all his life. There were family members who loved him. And there were 3 old men, former Wehrmacht soldiers, who had served with him. One of them, speaking to a journalist afterward, said, "Matthias was the best shot I ever saw. But it destroyed him inside. He never recovered. He carried those 345 deaths every day of his life. People think snipers are cold, unfeeling. That's propaganda. Matthias felt everything. He just learned to keep functioning despite it. That's not strength. That's tragedy." In his personal effects, found after his death, were the 3 notebooks. His children had never seen them. They contained every kill, meticulously documented. February 3, 1944. Rovna. 11 confirmed. Ranges 180 m, 420 m. February 14, 1944. North of Lutsk. 8 confirmed. Ranges 220 m, 580 m. February 28, 1944. Koval Sector. 6 confirmed. Ranges 190 m, 450 m. On and on. 18 months of killing, reduced to data. The last entry was February 14, 1945, Reichenbach. 1 confirmed. Range 380 m. Final shot. Thank God. Below that, added much later in different ink, in a shakier hand, I'm sorry. To all of them. I'm so sorry. The lessons. The story of Matthias Hetzenauer reveals truths about war that nations prefer to ignore. 1. Skill is not morality. Hetzenauer was supremely skilled. That skill was used for mass killing. Competence in evil is still evil. 2. Following orders does not absolve responsibility. Every one of those 345 deaths was a choice. A difficult choice, a coerced choice, but a choice. 3. War creates specialization in death. Modern warfare doesn't just kill people, it trains people to kill efficiently, systematically, without emotion. It industrializes murder. 4. Psychological cost is inevitable. Hetzenauer paid for his kills across 60 years. The debt never expires. 5. Victors and defeated both create killers. Soviet snipers killed thousands of Germans. German snipers killed thousands of Soviets. Nationality doesn't determine morality, actions do. 6. Some skills shouldn't be perfected. Humanity has become extraordinarily competent at killing. That competence is not progress. The legacy today, military snipers around the world study the techniques of World War II snipers, German, Soviet, Finnish, American. The tactics Hetzenauer used are taught in sniper schools. His fieldcraft is analyzed. His patience is praised. But rarely is the human cost discussed. Rarely do instructors mention that Hetzenauer spent the last 60 years of his life haunted by what he had done. Modern snipers are trained with better rifles, better optics, better ammunition. They can kill at 1,500 meters, 2,000 meters, even farther. Technology has advanced. But the fundamental reality hasn't changed, one human being looking through magnified optics at another human being and choosing to end their existence. Matthias Hetzenauer proved humans can become extraordinarily efficient at this. The Carabiner 98K he used is now in a museum in Austria. 345 Soviet soldiers are still dead because of that rifle and the man who aimed it. Their families never knew who killed them. They just knew their sons, husbands, fathers never came home. Somewhere on the Eastern Front, a bullet found them. German sniper, they were probably told. No name. No face. Just a bullet and death. One of those bullets was fired by Matthias Hetzenauer. He knew their faces. He saw them die. He carried that knowledge until his own death. Final reflection. In the mountains of Tyrol, there's a small cemetery where Matthias Hetzenauer is buried. Simple grave, no military honors, no mention of his wartime service. But someone, every year on the anniversary of Germany's surrender, places a small wooden cross on his grave. No one knows who. The cross has an inscription, hat getten, was ihm befohlen word. Moj Gott sein Ziel finden. He did what he was ordered. May God find his soul. 345 Soviet soldiers died because Matthias Hetzenauer was an exceptional hunter from the Austrian mountains who became a perfect weapon in an imperfect war. He was not evil. He was not a monster. He was a skilled man put in impossible circumstances who did what he was trained to do. And it destroyed him. The white devil, the ghost, the devil's cross, in the end, he was just a man who could shoot very, very well. And who paid for that skill with a lifetime of guilt. War doesn't create heroes. It creates survivors and ghosts. Sometimes the same person is both. Matthias Hetzenauer survived the war. But the ghost of those 345 deaths haunted him until he finally found peace in the same mountains where he learned to hunt.